Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is CA Sumeet Mehta from Bombay, and I'm here to discuss with you the top five positives of the Union Budget 2026, which has been recently announced by the Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, nearly a couple of hours ago. So, when we look at this budget very critically, we observe that there are certain thematic underlinings to the development and the preparation of this budget. The first is the government's understanding that they need to focus more on building manufacturing capabilities and manufacturing infrastructure into the country, for which they have realized that there is a need for a cost effective and a competitive ecosystem, manufacturing ecosystem, for which they are going with a model wherein they will be building up chemical parks, textile parks, biosimilars, and biological parks, and similar even manufacturing hubs for uh, containers and everything. So this is something which is where there will be concentrated infrastructure very specifically built for that particular industry, which will help the overall reduction in the cost of manufacturing of those particular goods, and in turn build international competencies on the cost and quality front. The second factor is the development of infrastructure and the logistics infrastructure in the country. And this has been a long thing we have seen for the last 11 years, that government has been excessively focusing on the development of infrastructure in the country, especially roads, highways, and everything. And this year, the focus has been excessively on the inland water and the coastal water transportation in the country. And this is something very good, because first thing is the waterways reduce the cost of transportation significantly compared to road and rail. And this cost effectiveness also reduces the dependency on imported fossil fuels. So this is a very positive move. And along with that, government is also setting up capacity centers and ecosystems in Varanasi and Patna for inland waterways, and this will help in overall faster development of the transportation ecosystem in the country. The third factor which is there, which we observe very closely, is this budget is focusing on increased tourism. Tourism, especially domestic, that too very specifically, the finance minister has said religious and spiritual tourism, cultural tourism, and heritage tourism. So we have seen religious tourism in Varanasi and Ayodhya and Prayagraj in the last 1 year, and we have seen the way it has impacted the economy of those cities. Now, that is something that the government has realized, that this can become a very good income generating tool for the local economy, and also employment generating tool. So government is focusing on that. Even on the heritage part, we have locations like Hampi, etc., where there are increased number of tourists going. So government is working on developing that whole ecosystem properly. And last is the city economic region development. Now, this is a very beautiful idea which has not been taken up in the last many decades. And living in Bombay, I can realize what is the need of development of the ecosystem and the entire city infrastructure, which can help in the economic growth of the city. And this is where government will be funding each and every city to the extent of 5,000 crore rupees. There's also a recommendation in the economic survey that we need to have high rises, multi-use asset buildings, where there is everything from residential to retail to entertainment to hospitality and offices and everything, like something like a Burj Khalifa and all, which, and we can have more concentrated vertical growth. So that will be possible with this kind of focus by the government. And when you look at the whole thing and you culminate it, the final culmination is in form of how to create more and more jobs, how to create more and more employment opportunities in the country, be it rural tourism, be it spiritual tourism, thematic tourism, manufacturing hubs, chemical plants, parks, textile parks, etc., or even logistics infrastructure, waterways, and everything. This is only going to culminate in more and more employment opportunities, which will also help the government in alleviating the unemployment problems in the country, and very importantly, increasing the per capita income of the people. So these are the major takeaways, positive takeaways of the budget. Now coming to the five lacunas or the drawbacks in this particular budget. The most important thing for anybody, including a layman like me, a middle class, a self-employed person, is that there is no tax relief for middle class. and that is something which is a very big put off for everybody, because when the government is focusing on increasing consumption and in wake of the rising inflation, though the numbers and the broad headline numbers of inflation are very benign, less than 2.5%. But when we look at the urban middle class related inflation, it is quite high compared to whatever the numbers are visible in the official records, due to various factors, including our cost of living and the standard of living. And this is where there is a consistent need for the government to keep on increasing the minimum exemption limits or the tax free limits for the middle class, so that middle class has more and more disposable income to spend, and in turn help the government to keep on revitalizing the economy with increased consumer spending. So this is something where the people have been hurt. Of course, the higher STT, the securities transaction tax, has been a very big put off for the participants in the markets, the investors and the brokers, and the market is spoofed due to it. And government could have taken this positively and taken a smaller bite instead of increasing it to this levels. And very importantly, there has been statements by the finance minister in the budget that they are looking at improving the ease of doing business and compliance complications. But unfortunately, the whole compliance ecosystem in the country is divided into center and state, because even states have their own compliance mechanisms and requirements due to a federal structure, wherein there are certain laws which are under the states list and certain like GST, customs, income tax, which are under the central union list. So if we have to look at I'd like to summarize something very important. There are 1450 compliance requirements in the country across all the states put together, and the center, of course, out of which 480 compliance obligations entail a imprisonment in case of violation. For a small businessman, this is a very big problem. And this is where I think government can take a sympathetic look, and more than mere talks, they can have a full action plan with the CMs or the finance ministers of the states coming together. And very important data point, the cost of compliance in India is anywhere from 13 to 17 lakhs for a small business, whereas when you look at China, it is nearly less than half the cost. So China is that more competitive just because of the lesser compliance hassles in that particular country. So I would request the finance minister to have a sympathetic look and have a more empowered committee involving the state ministers and officials to make it more easier. And at the end of the day, the most biggest and the problematic part is that there is no end to the populist spendings in this budget also. Rather, the finance minister has called for helping the weaker and everything, which is very good on surface with very good words. But when you look at the numbers in the economic data, then you look at it, we are running a 17 lakh crore rupee deficit. Now the money is becoming tight, and raising the money is going to become difficult for the government at every level. And if government continues to make this kind of spendings on direct cash transfers and benefits to the people, we have nearly 2 lakh crore plus of spending every year only on free food grains to the poor people. I am not against the poor people, they deserve, but this kind of spending, and this is also documented very much in the economic survey, that has also caused disturbances in the labor market and hurt the free movement of labor and the free pricing of labor. So this is going to have a implication, negative implication, and the finance minister will have to think about it.